So you do have evidence, and this is a recent publication of yours, that the fasting mimicking diet in healthy subjects can, it seems, affect biomarkers that are related to aging in a positive way.
Yes, aging and as well biomarkers for aging, as well as risk factors for diseases, right? So this was a clinical trial, a randomized clinical trial with 3 cycles of the fasting mimicking diet, once a month for 5 days, for 3 months in a row. And then, of course, we looked at baseline, and there was a randomized crossover. So in each case, you'll have a group of controls and a group on a controlled diet and a group on the fasting mimicking diet, and then the crossover. The results are remarkable. I mean, first of all, if you are a healthy person with, let's say, a healthy or a low blood pressure, nothing happens to you. And this is a really nice distinction with calorie restriction, for example, right? Earlier we were talking about, are they all going to the same place? I don't think so. So calorie restriction, chronic, it keeps driving your markers down, right? So even if you started, I mean, if you look at Biosphere 2, and these were then confirmed by Fontana and others, if you look at Biosphere 2, even people that had at the beginning a low blood pressure, they kept dropping. And by the end of it, they had pressure like 85 over 55, right? And same thing for cholesterol, same thing for triglycerides, almost everything. It really dropped to very low levels. Fasting glucose. The fasting mimicking diet instead, it seems if you have a blood glucose of 75, nothing changes. It doesn't drop it even more. If you had a fasting glucose of 106, almost in every case, it brings you back to normal. This is very interesting, right? And also very good for doctors. So now we have close to 3,000 doctors just in the U.S. that are recommending the prolonged fasting mimicking diet, what was tested in the clinical trial. And this is a very important feature. So the 3 cycles decreased. In normal people, did nothing. In people that had, I shouldn't say did nothing that you can see in terms of markers, because they already had good levels of these markers. But in people that had elevated cholesterol, it decreased cholesterol. The people that had elevated triglyceride, it decreased triglyceride. People that had the elevated IGF-1, probably people eating on a high protein diet, it dropped IGF-1. And the highest people dropped dramatically, it came down about 60 points. And people that had high fasting glucose came down. People that had blood pressure that was elevated, both systolic and diastolic, had major effects. And people that had CRP, systemic inflammation, in almost every case, they moved back to the normal range. So it's really powerful, I think, in resetting the system somehow, that it's getting out of its functional ideal state. It resets it, and I think it really rejuvenates. Now we're trying to calculate based on published profiles and also methylation profiles. Is this rejuvenating you? And also A and B, after 3 cycles, what is your risk for diseases in the next 10 years at baseline, and what is your risk after 3 cycles? And we suspect there's going to be a drastic change. Just, if you think about it, it's 3 months, right?
Right.
It's just...
and this was a 5-day fast each, so 1 week.
5 days of, 3 cycles of a 5-day fasting mimicking diet, and then we measure it again. And of course, all these things that I just say change, but what if we go to the databases and we plug in the numbers and we say, you tell me what is the risk now compared to before, right? So we haven't finished that yet, but I think soon enough. I'll just say that the results look very promising.
Great. I have a couple of questions. So first, you measured these biomarkers at baseline and then after the 3 cycles. Do you think if you were to have measured them immediately after the 3rd cycle, or
1 week? Yeah.
1 week. Okay. So do you think
in 3 months, and we also measure again 3 months.
Oh, you did. And how were they? That was my question. So, what were they like 3 months later? Do you have to keep doing it every
Yes,
you know,
I mean, there
month?
were about 60% of the effects were still there. So you could tell that it was smaller, but 60% of the changes were still significant.
Okay.
So this is why we say that, on average, people probably need to do it once every 4 months. And it's also important to point out that, until millions of people do it, it should be on a need to do it basis, right? So if you are an athlete, you have a great diet, low protein, pescatarian, and you do all the right things, you exercise, etc. You probably only need to do it once or twice a year. There's not very many people in that category, maybe like 5% of the population. And then as you move to a problem state, of course, then the minimal risk that is associated with doing a fasting mimicking diet is a good risk to take, because of course any drug that you take, any intervention that you do is going to have risks, and so now I think there's over 25,000 people that have done the fasting mimicking diet, the prolonged the same diet that was tested clinically, and we've had very few severe side effect reports, right? And even the ones that had severe side effects, they fully recovered, and there was no evidence that it was the diet that caused them, right? So it's very good news, right? And when you get to this is what in the FDA terms would be considered a phase 4. When you say, well, let's keep monitoring this once it's out in the market, and see, are there people that eventually show side effects that we didn't see in the FDA trials, right? Of course, we didn't do FDA trials, but so we have done phase 1, phase 2, and skipped phase 3, and now we're in phase 4.
Yeah. Wow. That's really great. 25,000 people. That's a lot. So you were mentioning the frequency changes. The frequency of doing this fasting mimicking diet may change according to someone's health status and what their lifestyle is. So someone that's obese or has high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high fasting blood glucose, all these markers that you mentioned, may want to do it more frequently.
Well, much more frequently, yeah. So somebody that has those problems, say obese and multiple markers for disease, a risk factor for disease, then once a month. So and that's what the doctors have been doing. So they put them on once a month, and then monitor the changes. If it works, then you can keep it going. It doesn't mean they're going to do it once a month for their own entire life. The hope is that you slowly, and that's also very important. This idea, especially with obese people, we'll see how it works. But this idea that you can go back to your diet after 5 days, right? This is very mentally to people. It's very important. Say, well, I'll struggle for 5 days, but then leave me alone for the next 25. That I think is both potentially at the mechanistic level, but also the psychological level. It could be a good way to go.
Yeah.